Hey everyone, today I'm continuing my rewatch of Twin Peaks and I'm on to season 2 episode 21. It's called Double Play and it was written by Scott Frost, that's the brother of Mark, and directed by Uli Edel. I think that's I don't know how to pronounce that. Once again we get to see this gory close-up of the tape that's across this man's mouth covered in blood. It's like showing you the detail, the gory detail in all its disgusting glory. Okay, so Cooper further expands on the identity of Wyndham Earl by calling him precise and exact. He says that he can feel his presence in the room. I think that, you know, that could refer to kind of a psychic ability, or it could be just because of the scene he's left behind. Cooper knows that Wyndham Earl is the only person in the world that would do this. Cooper's very aware that this is a game and that this is just the first move and that there will probably be a lot more gameplay to come. Okay, so we get that interesting scene with Audrey and Bobby. Audrey is passing on her father's advice to Bobby, stuff she's obviously picked up over the years while being around her father, and she understands what needs to be done now in order to secure things financially. And she tells Bobby that they have to work together in order to help her father regain his sanity so that things won't get out of control. Bobby has been trying really hard to get somewhere with Ben and failing because Ben is not on the same planet at the moment. And so Audrey says, look, you got to suck up to me now if you want to get where you want to be, if you want to achieve what you want to achieve. And Bobby's response to that is immediately to think that Audrey wants something personal in that relationship instead of just business-like. But I mean, I don't get that from Audrey personally. I know she's made a few comments like, you know, like with sexual innuendo to Bobby, but I don't actually think she's interested. I think she's just being a bit naughty, a bit playful, typical Audrey. So Shelley is terrified, running around her darkened house away from Leo, and who wouldn't be terrified of Leo in his current state? I mean, normal Leo was bad enough, but this is like a zombie killer Leo. Okay, so Bobby actually returns to see Shelley. After their big argument last episode, Bobby still wants to go back to Shelley and seemingly sort things out. You know, a clear indication that he does love her, I think. That maybe he wants to share in this good news he has had with Audrey taking a step towards trying to help Bobby achieve his financial aims. And that's kind of a really tender moment with Bobby and Shelley after Leo is hurt and runs away, seemingly to disappear, you know, and to leave them in safety. But Bobby and Shelley really come together and they look like that experience has made them stronger and their love is shining through and their dependence on one another is pretty obvious as well in that scene, I think. Okay, so Coop and Harry have a conversation. They both look really rough, if they've been through a long night and a really rough experience the night before. And Cooper mentions that he has been cleared of all criminal charges, but that he's waiting to hear if he is still suspended from the FBI. But Harry kind of ropes him back in and says, well, you're still my deputy and if you want this case, it's yours. I think it's a really good idea that Cooper take the case, seeing as he has so much insight into Wyndham Earl's character and he can almost predict what Wyndham Earl is going to do next. I think putting Cooper on that case, in charge of that case, is the obvious choice for Harry. Okay, so back at the James storyline. During this rewatch, for some reason, I have found myself drawn to James's character more than usual. I'm usually, I'm very much enamored by Cooper, but I found James's character this rewatch an extremely interesting and compelling character to watch. The question is, when James is taken out of Twin Peaks like this, it almost becomes like James Hurley, the spin-off, and is James a strong enough character to be able to maintain that interest, on his own with these new characters, or is he not? Is that storyline strong enough to maintain interest? And in the past I've always said no, and I still think that the Evelyn storyline is a little tedious, and that it goes on a bit too long, and that the character of Evelyn and the other characters who appear in that storyline, aside from James, they're not interesting. They're not immediately interesting. You kind of have to dig into that storyline before you can find something worth thinking about and worth investing in with your emotions, So Norma reports that Hank is in the hospital, and is it just me, or does she say that with a little bit of a smirk on her face? Like she's happy he's there. She is going to start correcting mistakes that she's made. Why now? I mean, why not like just kick Hank to the curb and go after Ed if she wanted to go after Ed? It's like, well, I'm not going to have Hank, and that option's not available to me, so you're the next best thing. I mean, I know she loves Ed, but kind of that's what it seems like when she waits until Hank has to go to prison again before she reconnects with Ed. And I think also that she's seeing an opening here with Nadine being gone, whacked off her face. With Nadine being gone, crazy, not on the picture anymore, and interested in Mike, and really Ed is abandoned. So I think Norma sees a way in here as well. And when Ed says, people will find out about us, Norma seems like, yeah, I really want people to find out now. Okay, so Coop starts to go into his history with Wyndham Earle. The way he talks about Wyndham, he describes him as a mentor, someone who taught him about life, someone who was clearly a personal friend, someone who was very similar, I think, to Cooper in a lot of ways. Cooper describes their time together as being pretty intense, playing a game of chess every day for 3 years and falling in love with the same woman. It's almost like they were two parts of the same whole. And when Cooper describes Caroline, he calls her a gentle woman, very gentle and beautiful woman. Obviously that tells you about the kind of woman that he would be attracted to normally, and we see that later with Annie. She's very gentle as well. So Cooper talks about Wyndham Earle and the situation with him and Caroline as well. So Cooper thinks that Wyndham Earle was actually faking the insanity, but I mean, wouldn't that be insanity in itself? I mean, you'd have to be a psychopath or a sociopath to want to do those things to harm people. But Cooper implies that he does know exactly what he's doing. Okay, so Donna comes and meets Evelyn at the bar, and I don't know, I could just get the sense that Donna is sort of putting on this tough attitude, and that really she's a little more vulnerable inside. I think she's had to learn to be like that because of what's happened over the past few weeks to her and James and Madeline and everything that's happened. I think she has had to find this tough exterior that she thinks she can get by with. But she does come across as a little bit spiky, but also pretty determined. Okay, Jerry arrives, and strangely enough, despite his character, he walks into this scene with his brother and he looks like the normal one. In regards to this storyline with Ben and his madness, it has been going on for a couple of episodes now, and whilst it is very amusing, it does feel like a storyline that's not really going anywhere. So Dr. Jacoby says that this role playing that Ben is partaking in is going to help his mental health and enable him to come back to a position where he feels normal again and where he understands what is reality.
It's a heightened professional drive and a working knowledge of technique has never had.
Okay, the Lana stuff is pretty funny. You get the sense that with Andrew and Catherine that they are like Jerry and Ben in terms of knowing each other so well and being on the same page in terms of how dastardly they are. And honestly, this episode has been quite strong on the comedy, I think. Even the moments of villainry or whatever have been played out with a comedy angle, you know, and when we get back to the James scene, when we get back to the James and Evelyn scenes, it almost feels like, even though that's not in Twin Peaks, that the tone and everything is more like Twin Peaks than some of the scenes that we're seeing in Twin Peaks, if you know what I mean. So Evelyn at this point, she reminds me of Josie a bit, you know, she does seem to care for James, but I think that she did set him up at the same time, and really she's out for herself. From the moment that Leo finds this cabin, it's pretty obvious that this is Wyndham Earl, and he is quite clearly very astute. He recognizes that Leo is troubled and mentally damaged, and he attempts to take advantage of Leo immediately. Okay, so I think everything about Wyndham Earl is completely creepy. I think I have done another video where I talk about how I feel about Wyndham Earl, and I think he is completely fucking creepy. I'm sorry, but you know, everything about him, everything he has in this space where he is living, the way he dresses, the way he talks, I just find him completely creep-worthy, and he makes my skin crawl. I think he is a formidable villain for Twin Peaks now that Bob has seemingly disappeared. Wyndham Earl seems to be planning it in advance, and you know, he's holed up in the middle of Twin Peaks. He is taking it step by step, and clearly he has a terrible end game in mind, and the thought of that is pretty terrifying, and I think that's a very good entrance for the villain after the huge build-up we've had about his character in the last few episodes. Okay, so that is the end of the episode when we see the chessboard and the wind blowing the leaves across the chessboard, basically as if they're out in the wilderness, but the wilderness doesn't scare Wyndham. The wilderness is where Wyndham Earl lives, in his mind and his heart. We see all these weird sort of mythical objects that seem to be gathered from around the world, as if the guy has been on an exhibition around the planet. Curios that he seems to have collected from around the world. And some of the things, they seem to be culturally influenced. It's almost as if Wyndham Earl thinks that he is the master of all religion, all spirituality, that he understands all cultures on the planet, that he is master of them all, that he believes that to be, just from looking at his collection very briefly in that opening scene with him. So I thought that was an alright episode. I don't think it's as strong an episode as many other episodes of Twin Peaks. Some of the story, like the storyline with Catherine and Eckhart and Andrew, that is played with a comedic, there is always a comedic background to that story, even though it's not particularly funny if you analyze the facts of it, you know. It's pretty hardcore storyline, and yet they are playing that for comedy. To me, the tone isn't always appropriate. I like the stuff with Andy, Dick and Lucy again, and the fact that they are hauled into the office by Dr. Hayward and basically they are told off, treated like children and told not to, you know, make up this gossip about this little boy. It's as if they're basically the same age as little Nicky, and they're being scolded for bullying him. And I did think the stuff with Lana is pretty funny because of the turnaround with the mares. And yet you do suspect that the character of Lana has that one trick storyline, if you know what I mean. Where else is her character going to go apart from to repeat that storyline? And we've already seen it a couple of times already, where she has basically, you know, seduced all these men and brought them to their knees. Like I say, on previous rewatches I have to admit that I found the James storyline less interesting than I'm finding it this time around. For some reason I'm actually getting into it a little bit more, looking at it a different way, I think, and really trying to get into James's mindset as opposed to just letting that storyline wash over me. As I say, I think you have to invest in it in order to enjoy it. I'm liking the continued revelations by Cooper into who he is as a person and what he experienced in his past. I think that's important because he is still obviously the main character of the show. You know, we have to know more about him in order for things to take on, in order for the Wyndham Earl storyline to have deeper meaning for us, and in order to understand his character more and more and to realize what motivates him. And I do think, you know, the more you learn about Cooper, the more you love him as a character. I don't think the fact that he betrayed Wyndham Earl by having an affair with Caroline is particularly damning to his character, because I think that we already know so much about Cooper and how pure a man he is that we automatically accept that whatever relationship Cooper had with Caroline was a kind of natural progression and something that was destined to be. So that's it for this episode. Next time I'm going to be watching episode 22, and in the meantime, if you would like to subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with any of the rewatches I'm doing, you're more than welcome. I also do some news videos now and then when there is news. So I may be doing some more news videos shortly in regards to Mark Frost's book that's coming out next month. Actually, it's coming out next month. And you can also follow me at the Log Sadie. I haven't really been posting a lot, but I've decided that I will start posting some screen grabs from the episodes that I'm watching, and possibly randomly as well. So if you are interested in that, you can follow me at the Log Sadie on Twitter, and I also have a Facebook page, which I don't know how to work, so because I'm a complete technology dork. So if you want to message me on Facebook or anything, you can at the Log Sadie, but I don't usually post anything on there due to incompetence. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching and goodbye.